right tool really can make your life easier and simpler. Everyone's got an opinion. Sometimes those opinions are actually based on real world experience. Sometimes. Okay, welcome back. I had to go into covert mode once again. My neighbor came home while I was shooting the video. He did not catch me. Fortunately, I saw him. I got a little bit of heads up from my other neighbor. So this is a different day. So let me set up the context because I'm going to split this into two videos. So you can reference in the links below the first video if you happen to tune into this one first, or I will use a thumbnail at the end of the video to cross-link the two videos. So since this is a standalone video, I'm going to be demonstrating using the rotary polisher on this Porsche 2002, almost 20 years old. This is highly neglected car paint slash clear coat. There's a few reasons I want to do this video. One, I want to show added diversity with the polish, what you can do in the sun with the right products, the right tools, the right finessing. Largely, I just want to stir the pot because this goes counter to what you will hear from the endless YouTube grifters, the endless YouTube expert, the endless, well, detailing forum experts, blah, 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 blah. So much garbage out there. So with that said, is spread this around because I challenge anyone that takes issue with this, which is like, oh, I would never polish in direct sunlight because it will swell the paint or fill in the blank. So I will challenge anyone. I will take them on. Now, is this ideal settings? Absolutely not. But can the moment be finessed? Well, I'm about to show you that. So with that, let's get started. My neighbor is gone for the day, as far as I can tell. I did a little intel prior to shooting this video, and I think I'm good to go for a short period of time and finish this up, and we'll take it from there. There's a little bit of context. Well, if you saw my first video, it will make a lot more sense. But what I did, I polished the right side over here with a dual action random orbital polisher, direct sunlight. You can check out that video. So I still have my line of demarcation, which is actually it should be right around there, is because it's very hard to see in direct sunlight this LCD screen. So left before, right after. One of the things I want to illustrate for you is, for example, you've got to apply all the information of the context. Direct sunlight, hot ambient temperature. It is approximately 93 degrees, which is almost a replication of when I shot the first video. Very hot, and you will see me sweat as I perspire in the sun as I'm working. And just to clarify, you have the air temperature, which is called the ambient temperature, but then you have this surface temperature, which I took a measurement. It's hovering between 160 165 degrees, which is scorching hot. Also, I am in the direct sunlight. So those are three factors right there. Ambient air temperature, the temperature of the surface of the material you're working on, as well as direct sunlighting. Those are all factors that you need to factor in. Also, because of the age of this car, there is some pretty good chips, road rash on the front end. You're never going to polish those away. So when I come back in for the after shot, I just want you to be aware of those, and I will show some of them. I mean, really, the front end's pretty speckled up. Based on the year of the car, 2002, I would actually expect that to be a little worse. But I will be using the rotary polisher, but let me tape this up for protection and we'll get started. So I'm going to tape up this side, which I polished in the other video, and had to ditch my efforts because I am in covert mode with my neighbor. This is going to be a surprise. This is the buffer I used last time. This is the bad boy I'm going to use this time, which is what's called a rotary polisher, high-speed polisher. I'm going to show you, I'm going to bust out a brand new pad. This is our, and I say our because I invested some of my hard-earned money into this company. Blue pad, it designates a pre-washed, but it's a 100% wool 4-ply pad. And what's unique to CSI's backing plate system is its hub centering. So centering your pad super simple. Just like I did with the other section in the other video, I'm going to tape off this edge for protection. Now, the older the car is, I have to accept certain things. One, the clear coat has naturally thinned out through just normal use. Washing, waxing, polishing, whatever. So I have to accept that, which means that the edges, the character lines, the high points, they are more vulnerable. So I like risk mitigation. You don't have to do this, but I want to take this to a high enough level where it could present a problem. In addition to just general protection, what this allows me to do is remain focused on my working area, because I'm not trying to mentally juggle two different things. Juggle the process of correcting the paint, managing the buffer, those types of moving parts, but also now I can eliminate the need, not entirely because you have things like the windshield wipers, but not entirely, I can eliminate the need to be over concerned with the edges. So this serves a few purposes. And every one of these topics, you can find some keyboard jockey that will take issue with it. Like just taping it off. They'll be like, oh, I would never use a buffer with tape. You'll get some of the adhesive onto the material, yada, yada, yada. I don't care what it is. Everyone's got an opinion. Sometimes those opinions are actually based on real world experience. Sometimes. As opposed to regurgitated bad information. And now that it's been regurgitated, the bad information is now worse information. So it's really, I used to default to trust but verify. Well, with technology, everything can be manipulated. So now trying to verify is virtually an impossible ask. As a rule, when I'm working on hoods, I'm going to use the extra wide painter's tape. And this is really partially to protect the material. So my buffer pad is naturally going to overhang onto this area. So partially, I want to protect the material. Part of that is specifically the wiper blade. It's intricate. So if you get some sling on it, which you will do, this allows cleanup to be simpler and easier. Now when it comes to taping, you do want to make sure that there's no edges that are naturally sticking up, that the buffer will grab easily. So I'm just verifying that. I have approximately two different types of tape that in most cases I default to, painter's tape, and then this more body shop specific tape, custom painting. So then I carry like 5 different widths, and you think like, wow, Darren, that's a lot of tape. Well, it's like a mechanic. Why does a mechanic, an auto mechanic, have 100,000 tools? Because the right tool can literally make or break your world. So this is hard work. You're not looking for excuses to avoid this type of hard work, because what you're chasing is desired results. Chasing better looking paint, shinier paint, glossier paint, less imperfections in your paint. That's really what you're chasing. I'm pretty certain if you want to work hard in direct sunlight, there's 100,000 other ways to do that. Point being is that you will naturally come up with excuses to avoid this moment. This is an extreme moment, but importantly, tools. So the right tool really can make your life easier and simpler. So when you're talking about work that's work naturally, that your body resists, your mentality resists, you don't want to make it more work. Because this is a rotary, as in cordless rotary from Milwaukee, my go-to polisher these days, I don't need to be attached with an extension cord. I give it a pre-cleaning. That's just what I do. This is a low linting, not a non-linting, because a non-linting pad doesn't exist. You're gonna get lint, okay? It's gonna make a certain level of mess. Everything in life has trade-offs. I'm gonna dial this to, it's set at 1400 RPM. Now when we train, we say apply right in the middle at your first application. Now that amount will vary based on, once again, the conditions. Apply it directly to the surface. Infuse the product into the pad. Now between that and this becomes like a painter's palette. So you just go up onto an edge, you dab the brush into the product, and then you go up onto the edge, you work it around, and then when you need more product, you just set it back down flat. You're getting more product there. When eventually this product basically runs dry, then you add more. Now the general rule is, well, this is the universal rule. This buffer represents the most power and the most control. Let me elaborate. So this spins on a single axis point. Because there's so much power, it would be hard to what's called stall this, which means if I push all my pressure onto that buffer head, onto a material, a surface, and I pull that trigger and I bury that pedal, that throttle pedal, I'm gonna wrap my arms around my body because this is so powerful. So to stall a buffer like this, a true professional buffer, is virtually impossible. So that means that I have complete control to transition into the control moment. So unlike the dual action random orbital, which that's the key word, random orbital, if I go up onto an edge to get into a tight area or to produce some additional friction so that I can finesse the area or speed up the process slightly, you can't really do that with a random orbital. Rotary you can, which is why it represents more control. So I could have a debate all day long as to whether this is the more dangerous tool or the less dangerous tool. Depends on the metrics in which you're measuring that. So point also is you keep it flat. The flatter you keep this, the less concentrated friction when compared to going up on an edge, but the less what's called swirl marks or hologramming you will introduce into the paint. So if I really want to cut to the chase in a safe manner, a strategic manner, I will go up onto an edge and perform the heavy lifting. Then I will back down and I will keep it flat to fine tune the hologramming. But it's always going to produce some degree of hologramming. Largely that is dependent on the color of the car and what type of light source that you're examining your work with. So it's not going to translate well on video, but I was going up on a slight edge during that moment. So now I'm going to apply, because this is, hot paint, it will naturally dry that sooner rather than later, but it's still plenty of working time. Once again, factoring in the metrics of the moment, I may choose to use more polish versus less polish. I may choose to work on a tighter, smaller area at a time versus a larger, wider area based on the temperature. So those are all things that you control that will be predicated based on the context of the moment. Now, there is no hard rule as far as cleaning your pad. There's many ways to clean your pad. I prefer just the metal spur. You can use compressed air. There's a lot of ways to get from point A to point B. But there is no hard rule as to how often you do it. A lot of it is just preferential. What I can tell you that is the more you polish, you will wad your pad up with spent polish as well as some of the material that you're taking off with it. Because in case you didn't know, when it comes to polishing, as far as permanent results, it's all about abrasive technology, which means that I am literally scratching my way to success. Yes, it sounds scary, especially if you're a newbie, but that is what you're doing. Unless, of course, you're willing to settle for marginal results in the form of a polish with no abrasives or just continuing to wax your car, all very temporary. So this is permanent results, abrasive technology. My default, like with the rotary and the wool pad, is I'm going to use this to fluff up the fibers and release the material within the fibers every 2 to 3 applications. Now just FYI, I'm not trying to talk you into a rotary, but what I will tell you is that, once again, a video for another time, which is I could argue all day long as to why this is safer. Well, for one, it represents more versatility because, like, for example, let's say I'm gonna buff out a heavily oxidized boat. You try to do that with a dual action, yes, you can do it, but highly inefficient. So this represents more efficiency, as in getting from point A to point B quicker. But quicker is not necessarily better. That's case dependent. Gonna go in for some more polish. Once again, direct sunlight, paint that's approximately 160 to 165 degrees. Once again, trade-offs. But after removing that polish, I can see that there is plenty of what we would call buffer tracks, buffer trails, swirl marks, hologramming. But I'm not worried about that part yet. First, what I'm worried about or concerned with is just correcting the paint to, let's say, 95% of what I'm trying to achieve. 95% of what is appropriate based on the car, the customer, and the working conditions. Once again, all those things need to be factored into the equation. And this is a moment where lighting is critical. Once again, this is not the preferred way. Now, when I talk to my customers, I will ask them, okay, you want me to do this to your car? Are you going to be scrutinizing it in the direct sunlight? Because honestly, is that not where most people look at their car, wet their pants over their car? If it looks pant wetting worthy, then it's going to be in the direct sunlight. So underneath a fluorescence or with an LED lights, very different animal. Those different lighting sources will reveal different things. So to apply that context to this moment, if I'm gonna do this at a real high level of perfection, knowing that I'm not chasing true perfection because I want to retain the integrity of this clear coat, is that I would come in and I would scrutinize each area with the right type of lighting to see that that there's a uniformed appearance, that I have corrected all the sections of the areas that I've polished on uniformly. That is a little more difficult in sunlight, but that's only based on the moment to moment to moment. When I'm all done and I do a little bit of cleanup, then I scrutinize my work. I go back in if I need to, finesse the areas, and then proceed from there. That's me cleaning up, and really you can start seeing all the lint and whatever, which is probably why I should be wearing my CSI apron, which I'm not doing. Apply some more polish. Polish, not a compound. There is a difference depending upon who you ask. Now this body line right here, this panel of the hood, it's got a nice slope to it, which actually fits perfectly well with the natural slope of the edge of this buffer. What you saw me doing there was finessing around the emblem, the Porsche emblem. And once again, I am responding to the working conditions, which is, if I'm going to go up onto an edge, I accept that I'm going to produce greater friction, greater heat. So I'm going to be moving the buffer back and forth quicker rather than slower. But that's where you have to compensate. So if I accept that I'm moving faster, then I may actually have to polish longer with more repeated applications versus working in the shade. So once again, these are things that don't necessarily translate onto video for you guys. To give you some context, damn, that's hot. But that does not feel any hotter than the rest of the paint. I know it's gonna heat it up to some degree, but you would think like, oh, that thing's gonna be on fire. Well, it's definitely hot, but my hand cannot interpret a difference. I'm sure the temp gauge could, but my hand can't. Because I know someone out there is wondering that. I know I would be wondering that, like, dude, how hot is that paint getting when you're using that buffer on it? Because this is true waterborne technology, I'm not worried about it swelling the paint like solvent-based products can. I applied a little bit there so I can finesse this area a little bit tighter. Now I am getting some lift off with my tape up here, so that's just something I take note. I can either stop, redo it, or just finesse the moment. Let's say I did enough cutting, enough correcting in the moment before I got lift off, then that's a judgment call that I can make myself. At this point, I just want to kind of finesse the overall area from point or section to section to section. I'm going to keep the pad lighter and I'm going to dial this down to 1,000 RPMs. And that's part of the control, is that it's got what's called a soft trigger, which means I can control the range of motion or the speed right at the trigger, as well as the dialing point here, which means if I dial this all the way down to 800, I can literally do it by one hand. So a lot of you guys are super afraid of this machine, which I completely get. But a lot of people don't take the time to say, oh, by the way, if you're a beginner, guess what? You still remain a lot of control. Dial down the speed, 800 RPMs. But for this moment, I want to hover right around 1,000 RPMs. Also pressure. Like I could just sit here and control this and allow the polish to do what the polish is meant to do. Or I can apply some downward pressure and kind of finesse different types of results out of the moment. You can also check the heat of your pad, which honestly, unless you were here with me, you probably wouldn't believe me, because this pad it's really warm, but I'm also working in 95-degree temperatures, so automatically it's gonna be really warm, but it's not hot. And I am literally just letting the polish do most of the work. I'm just controlling the buffer head. Also, something that doesn't translate very well in video unless I call it out is my hyper awareness. So I am analyzing that paint as I work on it. I'm assessing a lot of things. Is the polish still wet? Has it dried up? Do I need to apply more polish? What am I interpreting with the paint. What's happening with the paint? That's called checking results. But I'm checking the whole way through while I'm also working, as well as now that I stop, I check, I assess. It's called taking that feedback. Like if you get no feedback, there's no way to adjust. Good feedback, bad feedback. You need feedback to make adjustments. So that's the feedback that I'm allowing to enter my little brain, and I'm going to make adjustments along the way. For example, right through here, needs a little more finessing, but I can't go completely flat. Well, let me verify, because I'm concerned for the wiper blade. And once again, based on how much I'm charging Johnny customer, I would actually remove those wiper blades as a form of risk mitigation. Now, if you pick the wrong microfiber cloth, and if you're using anything other than microfiber, well, big party foul there. You need a microfiber. Now, based on your level of performance, who your audience is, as in your customer, will determine what level that you decide to spend money on a microfiber. Like everything else in life, they're not all created equal. Some are softer, some are made with higher grade materials. Some are just designed, engineered to serve different purposes. At this point, this is where I would wipe off the residue. And because now I'm just dealing with swirl marks. That's really what swirl marks are at the professional level or the body shop world. Swirl marks introduced as unique scratch pattern only available per the rotary polisher. Hologramming, buffer trails, so there's plenty of that going on, and that's color dependent, clear coat dependent. Not all clear coats are created equal. There is really some very, very hard clears, very, very soft clears. Color, based on the color of the car, will determine how easily some of the defects show. So if this was white paint, I could just like pack it up and hit the road and I'm good to go. But it's not. This is what I would call medium. Medium blue, but not black. Black, that's the worst. So at this point, I would switch pads. This is part of our system. So once again, hub centering ring. This is our foam finishing pad. Alignment's that simple. And you really apply the same rule of thumb. Now, I'm not going to overthink taking this polish off right now because it's not going to make or break this moment. So this is how Tom teaches it. Once again, right in the middle. I just began to wet myself. Well, more than I already was, because I love shiny paint. And this is just like, it really is amazing what can be accomplished. You know, I mean, different strokes, different folks, right? Everyone's gonna get a rise out of life for different categories of life. Well, for me, this is one of those categories. Now, the more I finesse that, I'm going to accept two things. One, the more refined that surface will become. B, I think I was on the alpha, anyhow. B, is that the clear coat will continue to thin out. And I know I drone on about that, but just so you know, when I say thinning it out, I'm talking, and this is based on real world experience, we're talking thousandths and thousandths of an inch as far as removal. But if you plan on keeping a car for 20 or 30 years, then that might be more of a concern for you. Now with foam pads, I'm gonna switch to a different tool when it comes to cleaning it. Now I could take a microfiber cloth and just rub this or turn this on and rub it against the pad, and that will release some of the product. Honestly, in the body shop world, most guys are using compressed air. There, good to go. Apply some more polish. See what I'm using. You might have noticed that the product kind of got wadded up a little over here. All I did was just use some more polish to just release that, and it just kept on going. Doing right there, because while this pad is very soft, it naturally wants to sit and create a gap because of that curvature of the body panel. So I'm basically finessing these little sections here and here rather than putting too much pressure right along this, because I'm trying to get rid of swirl marks, not produce more swirl marks. And that's just where experience and technique come in. Apply a little more polish, by a little more, I mean that much more. Once again, control. So what I want to do is control for this edge, because I do not have tape on it. So because this only rotates on a single axis point, I can really keep this edge very precise. And just FYI, I'm not really concerned with the edge of the hood. I'm concerned with the edge of the bumper, because this bumper is raised up above the hood. So if I were to keep this flat, I know that the friction will build up right along the edge of this bumper cap. So that's actually what I'm finessing in this moment. Say I get a little polish that wads up on me. Do something like this, which is still a no-no because I just made some marks with my finger. Once again, everything in life has trade-offs. I know I come with my share of trade-offs. I can verify that with my family. And this is where the big reveal comes in. And speaking about trade-offs, when it comes to efficiency, that's the process. So effective, efficient. So effectiveness is the ability to produce results. But you may take 2 years to produce results in a way that can be produced in 2 minutes or 2 hours or 2 days. That's efficiency. So when it comes to this world of rotary polishers, wool pads, compounds, polishes, whatever product you're using, this is the trade-off. So I can produce the results far quicker, but the cleanup is going to be different than using a dual action. So here I have, once again, Milwaukee. Pretty straightforward as far as the dust goes. And since I'm on that issue, dust, because people do say like, oh, I wish CSI or ceramics didn't dust as much as it does. It's like, well, guess what? So do I. I also wish that there was a little genie in this bottle that popped out and did my work for me. Now, that's not me making excuses. What I'm trying to tell you is that everything that was needed to produce results and the safest, most efficient way was put into this in a very unique blend, a very unique moment of engineering. None of the other garbage was put in there. No coloring, no smell good, no products that would weigh down the material and produce less dusting. So none of that garbage stuff. You can call it fillers, you can call it whatever you want. So it has none of that, which is why I call it the purest, simplest, safest polish you're going to find, period. And yes, the industry is slowly embracing it. And you say, well, why are they not embracing it, Darren? That's so much better. Well, it's better unless you're a company that makes, well, the other stuff, and you are willing to buy 2 different compounds, 2 different polishes, 4 different pads. It's like, okay, crunch the numbers. Doesn't take rocket science to figure out, gee, I wonder why they keep embracing outdated, inefficient, less safe technology. Okay, I said my piece. Now, let's go in for the big reveal. Now, what I'm noticing, and yes, the light does scatter right through there. So that's where I scrutinize. I say, okay, you know what? Needs a little more work with the finish pad, but this is where I'm scrutinizing my work. It's like, oh, damn, that looks so awesome. Once again, paint, car paint, more precisely clear coat, sitting on top of blue metallic paint that's almost 20 years old. And in case you didn't tune into the first video, when I remove tape, I also apply strategy. I'm going to go at a sharp angle like this, and I'm I don't feel the need to elaborate in this moment. I think I've delivered a whole lot of value to you guys. And if you haven't given it a thumbs up yet, like WTF? I mean, come on, man. Show me some love. Make a comment. And if you've been playing along with my recent videos, the word for the day is Porsche. And yes, that is the proper way to pronounce that word, that name, Porsche. It's not Porsche, Porsche. You know why I'm going to go on record and say that? Because I'm going to default to, like, okay, if Porsche is going to spend millions of dollars to advertise and the advertising agency can't even say their name properly, I'm going to guess that Porsche is going to remedy that. They're either going to fire them or they're going to tell them, like, hey guys, FYI, it's not Porsche, it's Porsche. That's the word of the day. Single comment in the comments below, that one word. Then you can come back separately and make your comments. What I noticed some of you have done, which is cool, whatever floats your boat. How about that? Is they'll just call out the word of the day and then they'll just go ahead and make a comment in the same comment section. Now in the real world, occasionally occasionally I would have to finish a car completely in the direct sunlight. And this is where the final wipe down really becomes a problem, because it's like you're just forever chasing dust. So if I was in a better world and I had the option, I would pull this into the shade, allow it to cool off, then do the final wipe down, then bring it out in the sun for final scrutiny. So over to the right, dual action. Over to the left, rotary. Now because the glare is so strong, my eye is blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, another roller in the night. So at this point, I'm going to clean up this line of demarcation. I'm going to finish cleaning up the rest of the panel, and then all right, for this moment, that cleanup will suffice. One thing I forgot to show you guys, which I showed in my other video, was if you're using tape to protect the edges, that same line of demarcation that was through the middle, that polish will be watered up in those seams. Now when you take your tape off, because you will have to rub pretty aggressively, you're going to introduce what's called micro marring from your microfiber cloth. Regardless of the quality of the cloth, you can induce some type of scratching, micro marring. So that's not really wanted. So what I do is, after I take the tape off, I blow it off, I just go along and I tap, I finesse the edges and allow that original polish with the foam finishing pad to wear down those edges. And by wear down, I mean that polish line that has collected up against the edge of that tape line. I did not do that, but I think you're picking up what I'm putting down. I told you there'd be sweat going on. The other day was even worse. Okay, party people, always check the links below. It'll take you to one of my websites where I wax longer and stronger on any given subject that I cover today. Covered a lot of subjects. I will cross-link the two videos on this hood. There's also another video on the spoiler. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next video.